I still remember the first time I wore a pair of heels, and I felt so grown up that day because I had just got a new job in London and I bought myself these very smart black office pumps. And it was a new experience because, wearing heels is walking in a completely new way. And I had to get used to walking on an incline. And it was great. I walked from my house to the office. I walked back. I went to the underground station. I took the train back home. I walked into my flat and then I tripped over the garden gate and I hurt my ankle. And then I spent like the next 1 week getting used to something else. And that was how to live with a bruised, twisted ankle. Because up until that moment, I swear I had never paid any attention to my ankles. It was just there. And then, suddenly when it's hurt, I felt like it was talking to me all the time and saying, Hi, I'm a joint, I'm very important to you, and you've not taken care of me. And that's all I could think about all the time. So every time I would meet anyone, I was like, look after your ankle, look after your ankle. It was just, I guess when you lose something, that's the only time when you really realize the value of it. And I did a search before this episode, actually, because I wanted to make sure I'm doing it on a topic that's of relevance. And so I typed on Google, why do ankles matter? And well, the search results said that they help me move, they maintain my balance, they bear the weight of my body, they help me do my everyday activities, and it's needed for exercise and to live. And then I did another search just to find out what harms the health of my ankle. Like, what do I need to do to look after my ankle? And of course, the first one was yoga and stretches, but the next one was poor footwear. So I felt very, very validated for choosing this topic because I realized that the way we dress our feet, it does have a profound impact on our ankle, our knees, our spine, our finances, and our social health. So yes, we want those 11-inch heels that everyone's talking about, but how do we know it's safe for our body? Like, is there something one should think about when getting footwear? And I'm very guilty of this myself. Very often I will trade financial benefits for safety. So, I've worn slippers and shoes that are, practically under budget by like, I don't know, 500, 600 rupees. And the thing is, they're very basic, but over time, as the shoes, the soles would erode, or they would squeeze my toes too much, or they would be very tight at the ankle. Over time, and as I've aged, I think I've started realizing that you really need to invest in proper footwear for the health of your feet and the health of your life. So I really do want to find out what are the correct types of shoes and footwear to wear. And we have with us today Dr. Sinukumar Bhaskaran. He is a joint replacement surgeon and an orthopedic surgeon. So no one better than to tell us what will mess up our joints. And he works at Manipal Hospitals in Kharadi, Pune. Did I get that right? Kharadi?
Karadi, Pune, right?
Kharadi, Pune. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Thank you for coming. I think mostly when people talk about shoes, it's a fashion stylist or a model or an actor or a fashion influencer. And this probably is the first time I'm talking to a doctor about shoes. So thank you for
True,
coming.
true. No problems.
You know,
So,
um, Sorry, before anything else, I just want to talk about the purpose of a shoe. Just start with that, because historically we know that shoes were very functional, right? They were meant to protect our feet from thorns, and they had leaves that were wrapped around your feet to keep you safe. But today it's a lot more about the form of the shoe than just the function of the shoe. In fact, I guess shoes are meant for, making you run faster, stand taller. This like almost like a mechanical replacement for your feet. What, according to you, are shoes actually supposed to be meant for?
So I think brilliant points that you've brought forward. I think you have done extensive research on how the
On
shoes
shoes?
and lower limb and the interplay with the lower limb anatomy. But just a perspective, I'll just take you back in evolution. We as the species primarily were actually quadrupedal. We used to walk on four limbs. We were for quite a bit of centuries, and then as we evolved, we started. We had our brains grew larger. We realized we could use our four limbs, what we call as hands now, to do much more activities. We became more dexterous. So then we just had now two limbs, and the entire human body sort of we went evolved into what is called as Homo erectus. We stood up straight, and the entire human body weight was now just going through two limbs, which was just initially supposed to be a kind of push off kind of mechanism when the quadrupedal animal is running. And now we as humans took it further. We are not just standing on it. We want to run, dance, pivot, do all sorts of things on these two limbs there. And there are three joints, that is the hip, the knee, and the ankle, and of course the foot below there. And the knee was just merely supposed to be a link in between the hip and the ankle there. But with all these changes that we did as humans, there was a lot of evolutionary changes, and this entire lower limb, even though they're sort of three separate joints, they act as one unit. So anything happening with your toe or your ankle is going to have a direct effect on your knee and the hip, and then going ahead, of course, to the spine as well. So first of all, we need to understand that if you're having a bad footwear, or if you're wearing a old footwear, worn out shoes, it's not just going to affect your feet or your ankle, it's going to have effects on your knee, hip, and your spine as well. So coming back to the function, like you mentioned, the shoes were initially supposed to be purely protective in those days. They just had a thin, flimsy layer of either would be, some linen or cloth, and then later on they started having this wooden kind of platforms on which they walked. Again, all purely protective. But then as we advanced, science advanced, we realized about the distribution of forces that happen through the feet, through the ground, and then we accordingly sort of shaped these footwear. And then not just to take just get in comfort, but also make sure that we are not damaging other parts. And in all this discourse or dialogue, there's a completely separate column or a parallel of fashion that's going on. So that's pretty important, as well as people wanted to, it's part of your accessorizing, and you need it to be right all the time. So for us as orthopedicians, it's a constant interplay between what looks right and what is safe for your body. Like you just mentioned about high heels, ask any orthopedician worth his salt, and he will just, I mean, the first thing he would say is it's an absolute no no. I mean, heels is, when you look at the mechanics of what a high heel does to the body, from the ankle to the spine. It's the biomechanics are all over the place there. So this is something that we do not recommend at any point of time. But yeah, I mean, we totally understand for all the ladies out there, it's extremely important. But there is a way how it needs to be used. Maybe we can discuss about that as we go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I really, really want to talk about heels actually, because it's such a, I mean, social health, that you need good, footwear to fit in. And I remember, like, especially in the teenage years when you're entering into young adulthood, um, the kind of heels, and they're so well marketed. They make you feel more confident. It's a rite of passage to wear your first heels. So I do want to know very, very seriously, how does how do these heels, or essentially walking on an incline, how does it impact our joints and our body?
So again, just to understand that, if you look, there's something called as a mechanical axis of our body. So when we stand up straight, the weight from the center of gravity of our body is transferred from the center of our spine, from the center of the hip, the center of the knee, and the center of the ankle. it goes down in one straight line. The moment you wear something like a heel, this entire mechanical axis is now shifted off, and now areas of your joint, which is not normally supposed to take a particular kind of load, is being loaded, and also the back has to arch extra to accommodate for that axis, to bring that axis back into normal. So these are extremely unphysiological postures, and so, I mean, a routine used for maybe once a week, or maybe 2 3 times a month, is good enough. But people who have been doing it for very long hours, like there are certain industries where they need to be wearing heels throughout the day. It's part of the requirement of the jobs. They have to be wearing it throughout the day, and they're doing it for years long. Definitely, these are people who would at some point of time develop some issues, not just at the foot, but the knees as well. You can develop early arthritic changes in the front part of your knee. You can have spine related issues, with the what we call as the vertebra sort of slipping on top of each other, something called as lysis or listhesis. So again, not very good conditions, because these are mechanical problems that come up, and of course, initially we could treat them with medicines, physiotherapy, bracing, but over a period of time, and as we age, see, because the young body is pretty resilient and it's very accommodative, adaptive. You can throw anything at it. You put it through all kinds of stress, and the body takes it, and you feel you're invincible. You can do all these things without a problem, but it starts giving you those signs beyond the age of 30, 35, 40, very subtle signs, and by the time you go into your 50s, 60s, they really flare up. So it's like a bone bank or a health kind of investment that you're doing at this age. When you take care of it, later on you can go ahead and make sure that you do not have any major these issues coming up. So definitely the heels uh, are a definite issue in terms of creating long-term problems for the musculoskeletal system. There's, unfortunately, I know, not very good news, but there's no two ways about that.
It's incredible what all people do in order to suffer the pain of walking in very, very high heels. And, I've had friends who've used numbing cream, or they've managed to procure local anesthesia for their for the toes, and they've put it there and they've walked all day and they've danced in the heels. And you know I, I think when we're actually wearing them, the issue is we're just thinking of the pain in the toes. We're not really thinking that after that what happens and what it's weakening or what it's shifting around in your body, which is one of the problems with footwear. And I'll say this, even things like this what do you call jutis, the leather ones. If you're not going to get it sized very well, in that moment, all I'm thinking about is the pain in my toes because it's squeezing my toes. But that sort of pressure on my toes, is that also having some sort of impact on me?
Absolutely. Any footwear with a very sharp, what we call as box, that is the front part of the shoe is called as a box. When it's too narrow, it starts squeezing your toes together. And what it usually does is it pushes your great toe under the second toe. It's a condition called as Alex valgus, and it's pretty common in the West, because Western women, they cannot survive without heels or the sharp kind of footwear. So I was doing my training abroad in Germany, and almost half the operation theater list would be, correcting these toes which had gone and getting it back. So these ladies were very clear. You operate, you do what you want to do. We are going back to the same footwear once you got it done. So it is that predominant, I mean, there. So anything with a narrow footwear, even not just for ladies, even men have to realize that your the front part of your shoe or the box. It's when you go and purchase or buy a shoe, make sure. I mean, it's not just the external part. It might look narrow, but internally, if you have enough space where you can sort of curl up your toes, move your toes freely, that's the right shoe for you. But The moment you're buying a shoe which is initially itself giving a very tight kind of feeling in the toe area, I think you should don't expect it to. They say it's the initial shoe bite, and it's going to stretch out over a period of time, but a tight shoe, especially near the box, is not a very good idea. So even our traditional shoes like jutis and all, part of traditional fashion, but can, if not comfortable, we have to make sure that we are not using it very frequently. Once in a while, again, it's not going to cause any harm.
And another thing which plays a big role in all of this is finances, because shoes are getting expensive, and unfortunately they're also not lasting very long. So I bought this very beautiful pair of running shoes, and I spent a huge amount on them, and the sole started thinning out very quickly, because I'm running on them, so obviously there's pressure being put, and especially where the toes are. So at some point, these shoes became very uneven, and I could feel the ground as I was running. And I never bought another pair. And I fell and I had a terrible, hand injury, which was also very horrible. And then later, I was thinking that the amount I spent on my hand injury might as well have changed that pair of shoes. It- Are uneven soles harmful for your joints as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Very valid point again. What we again need to understand is our foot is not planar all the time. There's an arch in the foot. That is, the inner side of the sole is elevated while the outer side is in constant touch with the ground. And when you have a sole of any footwear, modern footwear, it sort of maintains that particular alignment. And like you mentioned, as we use any shoe over a period of time, it's going to wear out, especially the outer side, especially when you're doing something like running. During running, we make this particular kind of balancing tricks with our foot so that we are landing on the outer side. And sometimes we start wearing the outer side faster than the inner side. And then you could develop this uneven kind of sole pattern that is there. And then once you start running on that, then your foot is not landing properly. This abnormal landing on the foot is going to straight away transfer all the stresses to the knee. You might not come with any foot pain to me. You would come with pain on the inner aspect of the knee or the outer aspect of your hip area. There's this muscle called the IT band, which has to work doubly now to make sure that your feet, your entire leg balance or alignment is well maintained if your sole is not right. So it's a very complicated thing. But what we need to understand is, yeah, I mean, keep looking at the footwear. If it is wearing out, and like you said, if you don't get it changed in time, you might end up having to spend on something else much more than what you'd have with the but that's part of any wearable device. They tend to unfortunately get worn out over a period of time. That's
Yeah, they do. And tell me about the fit of the ankle, because that's very often ankle related injuries do tend to happen because of bad shoes. Um, I'm always very confused. Should it be loose? Should it be too tight? Should it and what's the, because it's never the perfect fit. It's the toes
true.
still somehow manage to come. And then I've had my husband has very large spread out toes, and it's impossible to even find shoes for them. So is it time for us to start making customized shoes?
True. I mean, not everyone customize shoes. So again, there are two ways. There's normal feet, and there are pathological feet. So there are people who get repeated ankle twisting injuries. So these are people with a specific condition called as ankle instability, where one or two of your ligaments that support the ankle, they're slightly on the weaker side. So these are patients where we would rather give a footwear which is ankle supportive, or the anklet length shoes, or maybe your footwear should not just end at your what we call as the feet level, or the the malleolus, that is the bulge of the ankle level. It should go above that, and it should be strapping it as well. So if you're wearing a sport wear, you should make sure that the shoe is going above the ankle height, because it can give that extra kind of support there. And secondly, if you do have ankle issues, again, your heel or the heel height, I think we need to be extremely sort of careful about that, because more the height increases, more the chances of developing instability when you're walking and running. But these conditions can also be offset by doing very specific physiotherapy exercises. There are certain exercises in which you can stabilize just the ankle joint and make sure that you could use your footwear and at the same time stabilize your make sure that your ankle is stable as well. But the important part being, if you know that you're diagnosed of having ankle instability, definitely go for footwear that is ankle protective, that is the anklet kind of footwear. But if you are a normal person without an ankle issue, you could wear normal footwear as well, of course, being careful, avoiding too much of heels. Again, that's the point of contention that comes in.
I've started realizing that we go to doctors for medical advice, but your field also has such an extremely interesting wealth of experience with human behavior. So we had an endocrinologist come, and I asked her, "What's the strangest, thing a patient has ever said to you?" And she said, "I had one come, and he said he eats rasmalai for protein." And I just found that so interesting. Is there something that you've come across that's been related to shoes and joints that has just sort of stood out for
Yeah.
you?
Like one of the footwear kind of conditions that I would really like, it's when you mentioned that, like ladies going to great extents to, taking local anesthetic injections still so that they could, manage. So something similar, but this was not a lady, this was a very young girl, and she actually got into ballet dancing, ballet classes. And, the very abnormal kind of position their feet has to be while doing that. They literally, she had I had no idea about these things, and it was when they told me, they showed, I went and read about it, and I thought it's inhuman the way they actually tie up their toes so that their toes get flat and they're standing on their toes all the time. And this girl had severe callus formation. She was hardly 7 or 8. Her parents were interested. That is one thing, that she's doing ballet, but then she was really passionate about it. She just couldn't do without the ballet. And that was a very difficult kind of situation for me to tell her that this is something that she had to stop, at least not permanently, but for a while. Even that was pretty difficult for her. So we had to, then I sent her to, like you mentioned about custom made shoes. So I sent her to one of my prosthetist orthotic colleagues, and he got a shoe made. Which could sort of support her, which was lighter, that would go along with the ballet dancing, and at the same time sort of cushion the toes in which she was putting weight. And then they didn't come back. She didn't come back to me for quite a bit. But then later on, I heard she was dancing pretty well. She's doing all that, but she took the shoes off once after 2 3 months. So that was quite interesting. I mean, she was literally in tears when she came to me, and the amount of pain she could take just to pursue her passion, that was something that even I couldn't comprehend.
Right.
But that's how it is.
Mm. I think doctors can be great sociologists sometimes. I know since we're on the topic of shoes, I know I said we'll talk about shoes and joints, but can we just briefly touch about shoes and nails and nerves as well? Because I'm guessing the feet has nerves, and if you're compressing them,
Nerves, yeah, yeah.
and at the same time,
There is.
nails, the ingrowth nails tend to have a bit of
Correct.
an impact on
So,
the shoe you're wearing.
correct. So, yeah, there's two conditions that right away come out of when you mentioned about nerves. There's this very specific condition named called as Morton's metatarsalgia. That's one of the nerve between the fourth and the fifth toe. Again, it's because if you're wearing shoes with footwear that is got extremely narrow boxes. That is the front part. The tip is extremely narrow. You squeeze all the toes together, and this is a nerve that runs in between both these the metatarsal bone, that is the toe bones, and it actually squeezes that nerve in between, and then they get this continuous kind of radiating pain there, which is sometimes not just pain. Since it's a nerve, you might experience burning sensation, numbness. Sometimes you might lose sensation there, and that's a very common condition that happens when you wear these kind of tight footwear. So that's one condition with nerves that we see. The ingrowing toenail might or might not be associated with tight footwear, but we do see it in patients who are wearing extremely tight footwear. They get that the outer edge of the nail actually grows into the soft tissue, quite a painful condition, and then because it gets secondarily infected. And so initially, maybe you could try antibiotics and medications, but finally, the treatment is actually cutting off that part of the nail which is grown inwards. It's a small surgical procedure, but yeah, I mean, these are definitely preventable kind of causes, both in the nail bed, and thirdly, it's a very general thing is when you're wearing these tight kind of footwear, you tend to sweat, and there is a little bit of fungal infection that sets in between. So these are seen in sportsmen who are running long distances. It's seen in the military personnel where they are wearing shoes for very long time, this large heavy compressed boots, they tend to develop a lot of fungal infections in between their toes. So these are again something that one needs to watch out for, look out for.
You know, I just want to shift a bit from shoes to, the part of our body they're meant to be protecting, our feet. So there was, it's not a great study, but it basically hypothesized that our feet are changing based on the kind of lives that we're living. And that if I am sitting and watching OTT a lot and very sedentary, very low in movement sort of a lifestyle, that the feet start to get smaller and narrower. Is that true? And is that going to affect us somewhere? The fact that, our lifestyles are
Yeah.
changing and our feet are changing, how does it impact us
Absolutely.
as a species?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yes, evolutionarily, if you look at the human feet, I mean, they look at some of the remnants in the fossils of the human feet that were there. I mean, some of them are almost twice the size of what we had. I mean, so that was a completely different species, the Neanderthals, and then we evolved into more, sophisticated kind of the Homo sapiens, and but definitely, I mean, as per as usage, the entire body is a evolutionary uh, kind of thing where what you're using is going to hypertrophy, is going to get larger, bigger, and it's going to modify as per as whatever activities we do. Like the arch going up is very classical for the human knee, because we tend to run on the outer side of the knee, using it as a spring to just push off with both of these gates. Whereas if you look at the primates like the chimps and the the gorillas, they would have a flat feet. If this arch comes in into species, and even in the humans, in fact, children when they're born, you would see their feet are absolutely flat, and it's as they start walking over a period of time they develop this arch on the inner side, which is very very peculiar to us. So definitely a part of evolutionary change. But again, like as you mentioned, once you reduce your activities, who knows how the feet are going to be, 200, maybe not 200, but a bit longer, how it's going to look. There's going to be, these are very small, subtle, slow changes that occur over a period of time. But it's all usage dependent. How we are going to use the particular organ, it's going to adapt and change accordingly.
And I find it very interesting, how our body has played such a crucial role in getting us to where we are as a species, that, we can literally dominate just about anything on this planet. And we so often just take it for granted. Um, there's this bear walking trend that's, the naturalists are all for it. And it says that, do away with shoes, let's go back to being cavemen, and let's walk barefoot. Have you tried it? And what are your thoughts on it? I tried it, it's not fun. It hurts.
It, I mean, straight. I mean, but it depends where you are. I mean, if I'm on some beach somewhere, where I'm walking on nice soft sand, or I'm walking in a garden which has got nice lush uh, grass growing over it, I would definitely enjoy walking without footwear, that's good. But if it's road, modern day road, especially the kind of roads we are having today, it's literally impossible to think about walking without footwear. Socially, I wouldn't think of getting out of my house without a footwear. Uh, but I mean, it's a trend. I'm not really sure about the scientific benefits of it, how they work.
What
There
about you,
are
Greg?
this
Is it healthier?
Yeah, I mean, there are people who actually they're foot therapists. They say a particular part of your feet actually sort of connects with a particular part of your body, and you can actually just massage that, and you feel, or it gets actually better. Not just feels better, it gets better. But I really am not the right person to comment on that because I do not know the science behind that. But yeah, I mean, it's got an overall calming, soothing effect when you walk on a surface that is agreeable to you, but I'm not sure about what extent of scientific benefit that would give. Like, it can be a trend, but I'm not sure how much scientific it is.
But we do know that if you wear footwear that's comfortable, the right size, not putting any pain on our bodies, then that is good for us, right?
Absolutely true.
Thank you so much. I think it helps us, next time we go shoe shopping to know a little bit more about, what happens if we, exchange comfort for finance or just style for health.
Ashwin.
So thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm just going to wind this up with a short thing that, since we're talking about feet, my mother telling me the story, and I was very, very small. She said that in some tribes, feet are literally manipulated in order to make them the shape that the particular gender should be having. So girls have their toes tied up so that the feet stay smaller because you're supposed to have tiny little dainty feet. And as you were talking, I was just thinking that feet are so it's beyond just a species uh, evolutionary thing for us. It's tied into our identity. Then we have the concept of touching someone's feet as a sign of respect, or when we had kings and queens, and as a sign of loyalty. And feet play such an important role in our lives, and we're so busy dressing them up that we forget all this. So I really hope that those who've listened have enjoyed and have found newfound respect for their feet. Yeah, if you've enjoyed this episode, then please leave us a rating. Or if you have some thoughts to share about feet and health, then you can write in the comment section below, or you can email us at pods@indiatoday.com or on 8588966996.